and also with you.
Thank you. Let us pray. Almighty God, we give you thanks for this day, this first Sunday of Advent, for this new season. And boy, do we need a new season. Give you thanks as we prepare and as we wait for Christ, to see Christ in front of us in our daily lives. Give you thanks for St. John's, for all the wonderful ministries, and all the parishioners, and for our urban missioner Sabrina, who is joining us this morning. Give you thanks for her work and her witness and in her ministry. All this we pray in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
So, welcome everybody. We have a special guest today, all the way from New York City. And we pray for her every week. You hear her by name in the prayers, Sabrina Hartsfield, who's doing the Episcopal Service Corps up in New York City. I'm going to let her talk about kind of to share what she's doing, kind of what the program's about. So I don't want to say too much, but we're excited to see your face. I know you were an instrumental part of this parish, and you've left, but we hope you come back. But we want to hear what's going on and kind of what is this Episcopal Service Corps and everything you want to say about it. And then Sabrina will have a presentation, and then so if you have questions along the way, put those in the chat, but she's going to open it up when she's done to questions. And I've got a big, long handful for her as well, because I'm excited about this work. So thank you, Sabrina, for being with us this morning. It's all yours.
Thank you so much, Father Wallace and Father Dave. I was so happy when Father Wallace and Mother Abby reached out to me and asked me to present at Forum. I have really missed this church so much, so it's so wonderful to see all these folks and be welcomed back. I really, really appreciate it. And I have so much to share with you all that's been going on. And I've really appreciated all the prayers. They have definitely been felt. So I'm just going to share my screen really quick. Alrighty. So, as we mentioned, I am currently serving with the Episcopal Service Corps and the New York Service and Justice Collaborative in New York City. But I am a parishioner at St. John's, and I've been attending St. John's since my freshman year of college back in 2015. And I was confirmed at Easter Vigil in 2018. So I graduated from Florida State with a Bachelor in Music Therapy in December 2019. And following graduation, I wasn't too sure about what I really wanted to do and what God's call was for me. So when I found out about the Episcopal Service Corps, it just seemed like the perfect fit for my postgraduate transition period. So I want to talk a little bit about why I chose to serve with the Episcopal Service Corps. So the Episcopal Service Corps is a year-long opportunity for adults, usually between the ages of 21 and 30, to live into God's call by participating in service, intentional community, vocational discernment, and deepening spiritual practice, all through a lens of social justice. So my ESC program journey began back in September, and it will last until 2021. So I ended up picking the New York program after an application process. It's kind of like a common app where you submit to 5 different programs and you participate in interviews with them. You speak to site placement directors for your service site. And after that, the different programs can give each fellow an offer to join their community. And I ended up just really loving the New York City program and my program director. And so I ended up choosing the program here in New York. So I found out originally about the Episcopal Service Corps probably over a year ago, just by researching on the Episcopal Church's website. As a new Episcopalian, I spent a lot of time just kind of looking into the different ministries that the church had to offer. And when I read about the Episcopal Service Corps, it immediately spoke to me and seemed like something that I would want to be a part of because of the focus on service, as well as the combination of service with social justice. So that was something that I felt I really didn't get to participate in to the fullness that I would like to during my college experience, just because of the demands of my degree program. So I really wanted an opportunity to kind of throw myself into a year of service. I also have a passion and interest in learning about social justice causes, and particularly about challenging the way that the church has historically participated in systemic injustice from homophobia, sexism, transphobia, slavery, and white supremacy, and then challenging all those norms that have been perpetuated. So all Episcopal Service Corps programs have these sorts of goals at the core of their programming. All ESC programs also have a commitment to diversity and inclusion. So part of what made me want to apply for the program was the opportunity to live into community with a diverse group of people who have different backgrounds from my own. All of my interviews for the different ESC programs, they asked, are you comfortable living with people who have a different background and lived experience than you? And I think that that is actually one of the biggest assets of the program. Another reason that I decided to serve with the Episcopal Service Corps was the opportunity for discernment. So this is a huge component and a benefit to all ESC programs. All the programs provide their fellows with the opportunity for spiritual direction, as well as the opportunity to explore their callings for their vocations. So that could be religious service or being ordained, or lay ministerial service, or it could just be something else entirely. And for that discernment process, this program allows young adults to kind of take a step back during a time that can be a really difficult transition in our lives, and receive unconditional support in a loving and warm environment while still growing professionally, personally, and spiritually. And to facilitate this process of discernment, the New York Service and Justice Collaborative Fellows are intentionally matched with a placement site that supports their interests. So during my interview, the program director asked me about what my interests were so that she could find the best fit for me. Another reason that I chose the Episcopal Service Corps instead of a different service program, such as Peace Corps, AmeriCorps, City Heritage for America, not that any of those are bad in any way. Those are all definitely things that I still considered. But I really loved that the Episcopal Service Corps had that emphasis on spirituality and the opportunity for everything that we do through the program, from our service sites to formation to community, to be framed through the lens of spirituality. Another thing that I really loved about the Episcopal Service Corps was that even though we are a program through the Episcopal Church, there's an expansive and inclusive view of spirituality, which includes all different kinds of religious practice or even non-religious spiritual practice. And each fellow is free to choose and share with their community what personally speaks to them. So I have a video that I want to share where you're going to hear a little bit more from our program about what makes our program special. So first, you'll hear from our program director, Judy Douglas, and then you'll hear from the 6 fellows serving from 2020 to 2021. So you're going to hear a little bit more about the different components of our program. So let me know if you can hear it when it starts playing.
The New York Service and Justice Collaborative is the Episcopal Service Corps ministry in the Diocese of New York. In partnership with our host church, Trinity, Morrisania, this unique experience forms spiritually grounded leaders through service and action for social justice. This year's group of fellows, which you're about to meet, are living with intention this year in direct service of others. Their stories will unfold as they discern God's call in their lives and work to build a beloved community with their neighbors, parishioners, and each other. Let's hear from our fellows.
The Trinity Morrisania congregation genuinely cares so much about all 6 of us. We see them multiple times a week at safe social dinners that they host for us here, or they come and check up on us or work on the church. And we even have a buddy system where each fellow is paired with a church member to kind of get a mentorship relationship, and it's truly so special.
At Holy Apostles Soup Kitchen, I get the opportunity to serve thousands of people per week, and also learn organizational skills which I can carry on into any career.
Part of our community building with Trinity Morrisania is through service and through worship. 2 Saturdays a month, we accompany the parishioners as we operate a thrift store out of the front of the church for the local community. We also have the opportunity to worship with Trinity once a month, and we participate in the service as lay readers.
One thing I really enjoy about our program is that every week we get to explore our spirituality. So sometimes that means the friars come and we talk about things like racial justice, food injustice, and really try to understand what it means to be Christian in this American culture.
Intentional community for Trinity House means cooking dinners together, going to church services together, hanging out, spiritual formation every Wednesday afternoon, sharing in each other's good moments and difficult moments, and just being there to support each other in our growth and our journey throughout the year. Working at CEO has given me the opportunity to work with truly dedicated people. They work to reduce the stigma of people in our communities that have been incarcerated, and they truly embody the belief that every human being is deserving of respect and dignity.
Awesome. So that's just a little bit. That's just a little bit more about the program and kind of the different components of the program. Oh, sorry. So one of the things that you heard us talking about a lot in that was intentional community. So when I first started intentional community, I wasn't too sure what it meant. So I think what makes a community intentional is that we're more than just roommates. We're more than just people who are sharing a space together out of convenience. And this is something that our program director is always reminding us to be mindful of. So yes, we do share physical space, and it's important to figure out the nitty-gritty things of cleaning our home, not being too loud if it's early in the morning and things like that. But we also have a deeper connection. I mean, we share a community food budget for grocery shopping. We prepare meals together and share them together at least once a week, but usually it's more. And we have incredibly vulnerable conversations where we share both the joys we experience as well as our difficulties. And these photos were in our initial opening retreat and quarantine period, which was back in September at the Trinity Retreat Center in West Cornwall, Connecticut, which is owned and operated by Trinity Church Wall Street. As you guys probably know, to enter into New York, if you're coming from the red states, which are just the states where the COVID cases are higher, you are required to quarantine for 2 weeks before entering the state. Despite the circumstances, we really made the best of the situation, and it was really an awesome experience to have the opportunity to start our service year in a time of 2 weeks of worship, prayer, and bonding with each other and our program director. During this time, we had the opportunity to get to know each other on a deeper level before launching into our service year, where we would be so busy and overcome by our schedules, and things would start to feel a little bit more separate. So it was good to have that common basis of grounding and bonding with each other. So in these photos, we're creating our community coat of arms, which was just supposed to be a art piece that would represent the values of our community. We all created it together. We agreed on every component of it, and it features in the center Polly Murray, who was a civil rights activist who was also the first Black woman to be ordained in the Episcopal Church. During our retreat, we learned about Polly Murray. Some of us learned about her for the first time, and her intersectional identity as a Black queer activist who was also a person of faith. And we felt that it was important to feature her in the center of our community coat of arms, since she represents the need for all of us to highlight our individual identities and to listen to each other's stories. And I think that really set the precedent and the tone for how we would all honor the differences between all of us while also looking at what unites us. So the coat of arms is surrounded by icons which represent the shared values that we all agreed upon in our rule of life. Our rule of life was a document that we created together, which is a living document. We can make changes to it at any time, but it's a summary of the ideals that we set for our community about how we would like our community to function and how we will go about living as a spiritually grounded community. It addresses matters such as worship, prayer, and spirituality, hospitality and guests, relationships between each other, and food, which a lot of us thought was pretty important to address. Some of our shared values include compassion, accountability, joy, authenticity, inclusion, patience, and respect. So another benefit of having this time of opening retreat was we got to have a lot of really in-depth conversations about our values. So even though we were all feeling unsure about meeting each other for the first time, and we had some anxieties there about how we would all get along, it was really helpful to kind of sit and all hear each other's hearts and hear each other's individual stories about what values we felt were most important.
Sabrina, this is Father Dave. Just a quick comment that it's really interesting that the group chose Polly Murray to be an important figure for you as a community. And I did not know this, but discovered it when I was reading one of Ruth Bader Ginsburg's obituaries, that Paulie Murray, who before becoming a priest was an important legal scholar and lawyer, was very influential on Ruth Bader Ginsburg, which I had no idea of that connection, but I found it really fascinating that Ginsburg cited Paulie Murray as one of the key figures in her life as a jurist. So anyway, just a little detail.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. That is something that we learned about, and she truly, I had heard her name before coming to NYSJC, but didn't really know much about her. So it was really awesome to be able to learn all those things. I would encourage all of you, if this is the first time you're hearing of Paulie Murray, definitely look her up and read some of her writing. So after our period of quarantining together in our retreat, we moved into our new neighborhood of Morrisania in the South Bronx. So I have Morrisania circled here. It's just across the Hudson River from Upper Manhattan. So Morrisania is actually named after the Morris family. It was originally owned by Lewis Morris, who was one of the signers of the Declaration of Independence back in 1790. In 1840, the population before that had been pretty sparse, but then in 1840, Lewis's nephew, Gouverneur Morris Jr., built a railroad through the area, and the population really began to take off. And Gouverneur Morris is actually buried at St. Anne's Church in the South Bronx, which we'll talk about a little bit later. So there was an influx in European immigrants in this area of the Bronx after that, mostly German and Irish, and then later, the borough saw a large population of Jewish immigrants, and at the peak of that, in 1930, the region was about 49% Jewish. After World War II and the phenomenon of white flight, the borough went from 2/3 non-Hispanic white in 1950 to 2/3 Black or Puerto Rican by 1960. By 1970, the people living in this area of the Bronx were experiencing extreme poverty. Buildings were being destroyed by arson, property values were declining, and as a result of these problems, the area saw other problems arising, such as gang activity and widespread drug dealing. And this has kind of lasted into today. So currently, there's about 21,000 residents in Morrisania, and 37% of them live below the poverty line. So definitely coming into this space was challenging for me and for the other fellows. It was definitely a lot different from the homes that we were used to and the kind of the comforts that we were used to. But I think that where we're living really impacts the type of year that we're having and the type of service work that we are able to engage in. And I think it's a really positive thing in terms of our growth. So despite all these hardships that people in the South Bronx are facing, it's also known for being the birthplace of hip hop music and for being a vibrant cultural hub to a whole host of cultures, Caribbean, Puerto Rican, Dominican, and there's also many, many immigrants from a variety of African countries. It's also known for its sports. So the South Bronx is home to the New York Yankees, and Yankee Stadium is only a mile from our home. So our host church pictured here is Trinity Episcopal Church of Morrisania. And the NYSJ Fellows live in the Trinity House, which is the rectory directly next to the church. Trinity is a historic church. It's the oldest building in the district. The initial congregation of Trinity formed back in 1868, and they laid the cornerstone on their present church building that you see here in 1874. So as we mentioned in the video, part of our programming for NYSJC includes really being invested in the church community that is hosting us and attending church regularly with the members of the parish, having dinner regularly with them, and serving in the bi-monthly thrift shop. The thrift shop has been one of the really rewarding parts of being invested in the community because it also gives us an opportunity to reach out to our larger neighborhood and get to know the folks there. So basically every other Saturday, we take all of these items. They have a whole stock of gently used clothing and other essential items, and we take them all down to the sidewalk and we welcome anyone and everyone who's walking by and encourage them to take whatever they need. So that's been a really awesome thing. We've also been able to walk just a couple blocks over. There's a shelter for those experiencing homelessness. We've been able to invite them to our church as well. And usually after the thrift shop, one of the parishioners is in there cooking up a hot meal that we can also distribute to folks in the neighborhood. As we also mentioned, we're paired with parishioners who are kind of our buddies who try to make us feel more at home while we're away from home. And it helps us to build relationships between our NYSJC community and the Trinity community. And the church is a really small congregation. A lot of them are older adults, but they are really dedicated and they are tiny but mighty. They have no full-time staff, and they have a part-time supply priest. So basically all of them band together and they run the church. A lot of them have been going to the church for decades and decades. So they are all extremely dedicated. And they love the community and they love us so much too. So we are feeling so blessed to have the opportunity to have met all of them and to continue to be a part of their community. So I want to talk a little bit more about our intentional community. So far our time living together as a community has truly been one of the most rewarding and life-giving parts of our service year program. We've had the opportunity to be a support system for each other as this time has been kind of difficult in a way that is more so than other past service year programs due to the challenges of the pandemic. So we have really relied upon each other through that. And one of the things we talked about a lot has been interdependence. So rather than our traditional cultural mindset of, every man for himself, everyone needs to pull themselves up by their bootstraps and do the hard work alone, we instead are intentionally relying on one another for our support system and for things that we need help with, which has been a really special part of our intentional community. So our community dinners are part of what we do. We share a food budget, like I mentioned. We make sure that everyone's needs are being met with that food budget. We take turns preparing meals, but we're also just constantly invested in each other's lives. We spend so much time together every day. Like if we're not working, we're with each other. A lot of us work from home. I work from home like 3 days a week, and some people work from home full time. So we're home a lot and we're hanging out with each other a lot. And so it gives us the opportunity to celebrate each other, encourage each other, pray together, worship together, and also incorporate spiritual practices in our daily lives. Like our most recent one was after Thanksgiving, we made these affirmation bags where we can write little encouraging notes to each other throughout the week. Another thing we did recently, we prepared our Thanksgiving meal together. We weren't able to go home for Thanksgiving, so each of us cooked a dish and we all came together and celebrated Thanksgiving with each other. So that was something really special that we got to do. I mentioned COVID. So one of our commitments to each other in our community is to keep each other safe and healthy. So we're all getting tested frequently, making sure that our hands are always washed and we're always masked. And that has been something that has been a really important commitment to each other. One of the most important things I think about our community is that we can really be real with each other. So if something is wrong, we're able to go to each other and tell the person that, what you said hurt me, or how can we reconcile from this? So we want to address any problems that we have head on so that we can move forward and heal as a community. So one of our fellows mentioned the friars, and that is part of our spiritual formation. So the brothers from the Franciscan monastic community at the Church of St. Mary the Virgin near Times Square come to us each Wednesday afternoon for about 3 hours of sharing a meal, fellowship, and teaching us about influential spiritual figures as well as social justice topics. So they are really passionate about their Franciscan community. So we did a whole unit about St. Francis and St. Clare and the concept of evangelical poverty. We also had a discussion of discernment, as that's one of the core focuses of NYSJC. We talked about Thomas Merton, who is a monk and a theologian and is the namesake of one of the brothers who teaches us. We've talked about food justice, lots of different things. We also had the opportunity to share spiritual practices with each other. So I got to bring out my guitar and we sang hymns together one week. Other weeks, fellows have led us in some stretching and yoga practice. Sometimes we'll just be doing some silence. So we've been doing a lot of work with silence as well. But most recently, one of the brothers led us in an exercise of contemplative photography. So he's actually a photographer, and he shared with us this unique spiritual practice of taking photos of things in a way that focuses not on things that are necessarily flashy or would normally catch people's attention, but that things we're drawn to or that contribute a new or unique perspective. So here are some of the photos that I took from that exercise that I particularly liked. So that kind of gives you a picture of what we do for spiritual formation. So the next thing I want to talk about is where we spend most of our time at our service placement. So here's me dressed up as an angel for our Christmas pageant. So I am the intern for the mission intern at St. James Church on the Upper East Side on the corner of 71st and Madison Avenue. So it's definitely a polar opposite from the neighborhood I am living in. It is, it's a very jarring transition, but it's a beautiful church, a vibrant parish community. It was first opened in 1810 as a summer chapel for New Yorkers who had summer homes that at that time was what was north of the city, and has become a large and vibrant community with programming for children, youth, young adults, and people of all ages, very much like St. John's. The church also has a wonderful music program, including an incredible organ and choir. So like I mentioned, I serve as the mission intern on the missions team alongside our volunteer coordinator, who's also an ESC alum and also one of our associate rectors. So together we coordinate a pool of over 50 volunteers who serve in about 10 different mission projects. So I want to share with you a little bit more about the specifics of some of the projects that I've been able to help with during my time serving at St. James. So this is the food pantry at St. James Fordham, which is a church up near Fordham University in the Bronx. So basically, we have a partnership with St. James Fordham, which is a food pantry that provides fresh and healthy food to neighbors, regardless of religious affiliation and without discrimination whatsoever. So we ensure that each family leaves with 3 days worth of nutritious meals. So we give out basically about 7,000 meals worth of groceries for the 2 Saturdays that we're open each month. As I mentioned before, the majority of individuals and families in the Bronx earn an annual income of $30,000 or less. So this ministry is incredibly vital and necessary. We just did a distribution on Thanksgiving Day, and we saw probably close to 200 people that we were able to give out meals to, or groceries to. So I mentioned earlier Gouverneur Morris and St. Anne's Church. So good old Gouverneur Morris is buried here at St. Anne's, which is a bilingual congregation in the South Bronx. So this is a partnership that St. James has built with St. Anne's Church in the Bronx. And once upon a time, St. James parishioners created these gardens that they helped to plant and nurture, and we're doing that again. So gardeners of all ages and skill levels were able to participate in a 3-week series of gardening get-togethers where parishioners from both of our churches work together to weed, prune, plant bulbs, and rake a lot of leaves together. So I'm really excited to see in the spring what those bulbs look like, because this garden that I have here is actually going to be a beautiful cutting garden that the church can use for their altar flowers. This was just such a wonderful opportunity where we had gorgeous weather. Luckily, it's been a little bit warm recently here. So I definitely love to be able to get in touch with nature again, as that is not part of my day-to-day life anymore, living in New York City. Next, we have the Church of St. Matthew and St. Timothy, their soup kitchen. So groups of our volunteers from St. James have been heading to St. Matthew and St. Timothy Church on the Upper West Side on Sunday afternoons to participate in serving in their meal program. So each week we fellowship with other groups of volunteers from the community organizations, as well as parishioners from St. Matthew and St. Timothy, and we hand out typically around 60 meals each week. So this photo is of 2 of my housemates who were kind enough to spend their Sunday volunteering at the soup kitchen with me. It was really awesome to be able to have some of the fellows get involved with my work and be part of our goal as our intentional community to visit each other's work placements, which is going to be a little bit more difficult given COVID, but hopefully by the end of the year, we'll be able to make that happen. And then finally, I want to talk about St. James's own community kitchen program. This is a long-standing mission of St. James Church that is so important to our congregation and to all of our volunteers, as well as our guests who are fed and nurtured by this program every week. So since the 1980s, St. James has had a thriving meal program where volunteers have long gathered to serve neighbors in need. On Tuesday mornings and Friday evenings, we meet in the St. James kitchen to prepare upwards of 90 meals. On the Friday after Thanksgiving, we actually did 112 meals and then a few more, I think. So our volunteer chefs create the menus. We prepare delicious and hearty meals from scratch, and we give out lots of fruits and vegetables as well. And this is just a really meaningful way that we can show our concern for our neighbors in need. So pre-COVID, guests were able to be welcomed into the church, and we would serve them with white tablecloths and flatware and flowers at the table and coffee and everything like that. And volunteers would greet each guest by name as they came in and chat with them at their tables. And then they would serve them restaurant style, and they would clear their plates and everything like that. But unfortunately, with COVID, the program actually had to close for a brief amount of time. And then during the time I've been here, we've reopened it as a kind of reimagined grab and go meal program. So that has been something that I've really enjoyed getting to be a part of, trying to make sure that we can operate this program in a way that keeps everyone safe. So I think that feeding people is truly a sign of the love and respect that Jesus asked us to show one another. And offering hospitality, I think, is definitely one of the best ways that we can show love to our neighbors. So even though we're having to do things a little bit differently now, this new program structure allows us to continue to serve and offer somewhat of that hospitality as we distribute meals to the guests on from our sidewalk in front of the church. So some of the other projects that I've been involved in are the Share the Joy Christmas gift distribution, partnered with the Osborne Association, which is a organization helping out families who have family members who are incarcerated or are formerly incarcerated. So I've been kind of coordinating that and seeing how we're gonna, usually there would be this big Christmas party and we would welcome all the children into the church, kind of like we do with Grace Mission, but unfortunately we're not gonna be able to do that this year. So we've been figuring that out. We've also, there used to be a shelter space just down the block at a Presbyterian church, which is now transitioning into a clothing closet. So we're going to have a source of free clothing that we're working on. We also have a migration ministry where I got to participate in a book group. We were reading the book Enrique's Journey, and we were discussing it, and we were discussing ways that we can advocate for just immigration policy. And hopefully once COVID allows, we'll be doing some in-person actions on our migration ministry. So clearly we have a lot going on here at St. James. So I feel really lucky to be able to be here during this time. So I've really learned a lot. It's definitely outside of my prior professional experience, but it's been so rewarding to get to be so inspired by the clergy here and the staff and all the volunteers. So I just feel really blessed to have the opportunity to serve in this way. So I wanted to share this with you all as well. I really feel that God is using me, as well as all of the other fellows, in service of bringing the kingdom of God on earth, and in service of all of our neighbors in NYC and beyond. We even have a fellow whose service work is based in India, working on caste-based discrimination. So we're working here locally, but we're also extending that to globally. So all the ministries that I've mentioned have not only been incredibly important for building relationships between different churches and meeting the physical needs of our neighbors, but have also provided me with endless learning opportunities about the practicalities of doing church ministry, and have taught me so much about myself and what matters most to me. For example, our community kitchen program, food pantry and soup kitchen, have inspired me to lean into learning about food justice and the mechanisms behind why so many of our neighbors are hungry despite there being this surplus of food. It's really just about distribution rather than the actual amount of food. While these charitable programs are so crucial, I love that NYSJC is able to tie in the social justice component as well, and encourages all the fellows here in New York to dig deeper into these root causes of injustice. So I think this program is so important for our community here in New York City, as well as the communities that all of the fellows will serve in the future. So I also want to give out our ways you can stay in touch. So if you'd like to be added to our email newsletter, you can just reach out to me and I can pass that along to you every month. There's also our website, which is nysjc.org, our Instagram, which is at NY Service and Justice, and our Facebook page, which is NY Service plus Justice Collaborative. And finally, I want to thank you all so much for the opportunity to share with you all today about what I've been up to for the past few months. And I want to sincerely thank you all for all of your support and your prayers. I miss St. John's so much, but even though I'm so far away from home, I really feel the support of my St. John's family behind me every step of the way. And I could not be more thankful for all the support that you all have given me. So thank you so, so much for that.
In the time of COVID, Sabrina, you are one busy lady, and there's amazing ministry going on. Wow.
Thank you so much, Abby.
There's some some reflections in the chat, but anybody have a question or a direct question for Sabrina? We can open it up now. Or you can put
Father
it in the
Walsh,
chat.
this is Dave. I'd like to get the ball rolling here on questions. Sabrina, first, I'm glad that you are very close to the true cathedral in the Bronx, Yankee Stadium. That warms my heart to know that you're close by there. But seriously, one of the figures perhaps that you've learned about is Saint Ignatius of Loyola. I'm not sure if you've talked at all about Ignatian or Ignatian spirituality. And in Ignatian expressions of the Christian faith, they speak of consolations and desolations. That is, moments where we have felt the presence of God consoling and close to us, but also times perhaps where we have felt distant from God. So I'm wondering, in your experience so far, have there been particular moments that have been forms of consolation to you where you've really felt close to God, and maybe some difficult moments where you go, God, where are you? What's going on here? I'd love to hear some of your thoughts on that.
Absolutely. So I've definitely had a lot of those consolation and desolation moments. I think when we first arrived, there was a lot of uncertainty, and and especially regarding the virus, and throughout our time here, there's been some concerns about some of the shutdowns that are occurring. So in some of those times, it feels truly frightening. And then the fact that some of us still have to travel and go out and do our work because it's work that we can't do remotely. So there's been some real moments between us and our house when we've really shared with each other, I'm scared of what's happening. I'm scared about exposing myself, and I'm scared of exposing the people who live with me. And so I think we've really showed some true vulnerability in those moments of sharing those concerns with each other. At the same time, I think some of the beautiful moments where I've really seen God are in the other fellows who I'm living with. And like I mentioned, our Wednesday night dinners, those are some of the most amazing life-giving times, like where we'll just be like laughing so hard, or just sharing like funny things that happen to us throughout the week. And so those are definitely like some of my bright spots. Another one for me was just the volunteers that I get to interact with at St. James. We have some of the most incredible, dedicated people who, they want to, and it's hard because with COVID, like we're a lot more strict with who can come, and you have to sign up and you have to do all these things to come, but they want to be here anytime the doors are open, serving others. So that has been just truly so inspiring to me, and really a testament to why I'm here and why I'm doing this.
I worked with a couple of things. First, Zach Thompson is a good friend of mine. I think at St. James. Is he up there? Oh, yeah, he's a great guy.
Yes, yeah, he's one of our associate rectors.
Yeah, he was in Atlanta for a long time. So
awesome.
To tell him I said hello.
Yeah,
Secondly,
absolutely.
I had a person I worked with in Atlanta who was part of the Jesuit Service Corps back in the day. And one of their big, intentional communities, and hopefully you did a great job elaborating on this. I worked with the Episcopal Service Corps in Atlanta, and that's a difficult piece when you have all that and all those folks together, sharing a space, fighting over a budget, on what type of groceries to get, because everybody's got different dietary restrictions. So we had to do a lot of work around that. And your Friday times it teaches you about conflict and how to navigate conflict. And so one of my colleagues who was a Jesuit volunteer said they were sending out notices saying that, once you've gotten out of a Service Corps program, and if you've lived in an intentional community, their rates of their divorce rates were some of the lowest in relationships, because you learn.
I believe it. Yeah.
So that's what he kept reiterating over and over again when he talked to our fellows. This is going to be good for you down the line.
Right. I mean, it's true. It really prepares you to do the future work of either living in community in a different way, or the work of marriage. I mean, it's something that most young adults, I mean, I know when I was in college, my roommates and I, we would try to avoid each other as much as possible. We weren't spending all this time together and cooking meals together. We were ignoring each other. So it's definitely a different environment to be intentionally doing all these things together. And like you said, the food budget, I'm the only non-meat eater in the house. So I definitely have to advocate for myself, but that's good. It's a good skill to learn to have your needs be communicated clearly and effectively and have those needs be met.
It is. So we got a question from Laurel about what brought you into the program. And you covered some of this, and let me dovetail that. And this is one I used to ask all the interns in Atlanta. In this moment, and this is kind of early, you're midway through. Where do you think you're being called when this year is over with? So maybe reiterate for Laurel what brought you into the program, and now kind of halfway through, are you sensing a call when you on your way out? And that's too early to ask. I understand. You can say, "Shut up, Wallace. Give me a few more months."
No, I really appreciate it. And so I wasn't too sure what Episcopal Service Corps program I wanted to do at the beginning of my application process. So I mentioned a little bit about wanting to do some type of service work after graduating college, just as a intentional time of discernment of what my next steps would be. So that's why I chose the Episcopal Service Corps. And then what led me to New York is after I did all my interviews, I'm going to be super honest, after I met my program director, I knew that was where I wanted to be. The way that she talked about the community of Trinity where we're being hosted, the way that she talked about the neighborhood, the way that she talked about the service placements, it just really felt like this is where God was calling me. And then in terms of what's next, I'm still not fully sure. Like you said, it's still pretty early. So I'm still working on what's next for me and what the next steps will be for me. I've really loved getting to work in a church environment. So that's definitely not something that I'm ruling out, but I'm still in the process of discerning. It's a really difficult journey, and I'm working closely with my spiritual director to kind of talk about some of those things about what's after this.
I love the rhythms and the patterns you've mentioned already, Sabrina, from fully defining intentional community, as mentioned, to the rhythms, sort of as we talk about Advent and how do we prepare. Part of that is practice, practice, and practice, and having the rhythm of Wednesday for 3 hours with monastics. Some people stretch just to get to Wednesday evening for 1 hour on Zoom for a forum. That gift and the joy that you shared that time and the reward that's there, along with mentioning a spiritual director, and the practices within. Thanks so much for that. Has there been any surprising practices that maybe you didn't know existed, or you've fallen deeper in love with and have treasured in this time?
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely did not know about the contemplative photography that I shared earlier before it was shared with us by the brothers. So that is something that I definitely want to continue doing. I thought it was just so unique, and it's a great way to practice mindfulness in a more concrete way. I'm a person who has trouble with just silence and meditation. So having something to do in order to be mindful is like really helpful to me. It's interesting. One of my roommates one week, she just shared with us, she was like, we're just going to stand up and we're going to stretch. And, that's something that I think, especially when we're working from home, we're not really doing that. I mean, it's hard to remember to take care of our bodies in that way. So that mind-body connection, I think, is super helpful. So definitely a lot of spiritual practices that I hadn't really thought about before. And I'm hoping to continue to get some more of those as the year goes on.
And it's so wonderful to hear your voice and to hear the joy of your storytelling through the apprehension of, okay, I don't know exactly what we're going to be up to. And now we've got COVID to contend with at the same time. What will that make it look like? And in your presentation, hearing how full but rich that each piece that you're part of, and you being a part of, not the linchpin or the necessary piece, that call to empowering and equipping. So thank you for that.
Thank you so much, Abby. I really appreciate it. It's good to hear your voice as well.
Other questions? I've got one little question, and others can. Sabrina, when you interviewed, did you interview for the site placement as well, or was that in Atlanta? We would interview interns, and then part of that retreat was figuring out which site placement you go to there. So was that or in some programs I think did it differently. So you interviewed and you went straight to site placement. Help me follow that trend.
Yeah. So like you said, it's different for different programs. So some of the programs I interviewed with site placements before being extended an offer. I believe I think there was some programs where I might have interviewed with 2 different site placements, but some just 1. And then with NYSJC, it was kind of just like I told my director in the interview what I was interested in. And then after I accepted an offer, I did an interview with my site placement. So we already knew going in what our site placements would be, which I think was super helpful. But I also understand the benefit of kind of going in and not knowing where you're going to end up. So I think that both ways could be really valuable.
And to reiterate for everybody else, I was on the board in Atlanta, and when she talks about intentional community, part of the strategy when you're putting together these groups is to really, when she talked about diversity, we made sure that it was going to be perhaps even a pressure cooker inside that house. So she's done a phenomenal job of talking about the beauty of intentional living, but it's set up to be a challenge in a lot of programs, and a good challenge, and you've done amazing. You truly have. You're very articulate about it, so truly exceptional. So if there are no more questions, we will let you enjoy a little Sabbath time.
I just love that we get to talk about Sabrina's last name is not our urban missioner, but Hartsfield, friends, Hartsfield, and she'll take love notes in the mail, I'm pretty sure. So Sabrina, our urban missioner, Hartsfield, it is so good to see and hear from you.
Thank you so much.
And Sabrina, this is Dave. You shared so many wonderful photographs, and we've seen them on Facebook as well, where you are just smiling, and we can't really see because we can just see it in your eyes because you're always wearing a mask, which is exactly what you should be doing. But I want you to know that we on Zoom can see how you carry the light of God wherever you go. And I am 100% sure you are bringing that light of Christ to your friends you're living with and those you're serving in New York. So thank you for being a bearer of that light of Christ.
Thank you so much, Dave. I really, really appreciate that. That means so much to me to hear.
Thank you all for being here today. Remember 2 till 4, we're on campus for Communion in the Garden, and you can get your Advent wreath. There's also the Advent speaker, Ashley Brown Rees. You can still sign up for that. She's a senior director for the Daring Way, so that's happening on Thursday. And so sign up for that. And then what is the third thing I missed? Next week we'll be back here talking about Advent. I saw Abby raise a hand. So
yeah, I wanted to remind folks that our 12:10 on Wednesdays will actually come back this Wednesday. Father Dave will be preaching. It'll be in the church, not the chapel, for social distancing. Wear your mask, but come, and that simple service again will be at 12:10, noonday Eucharist in the church. Come have some quiet, listen to a wonderful word, scripture, and receive the Eucharist too. So again, that's Wednesday, every Wednesday in December, starting the 2nd.
Thank you all. Go in peace to love and serve the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you, Sabrina.
Bye, Sabrina. Be well. Happy Advent.